Is the Razer Blade 14 2022 edition a worthy successor to the ever-popular Blade series of laptops, or is it worth waiting till next year? Let's find out. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Epic PC channel, and today we're sitting down with the Razer Blade 14, the newest addition to the highly successful Razer Blade series and one of the best built PC laptops on the market. This is an interesting review for us because we've reviewed a number of Razer Blade laptops before. We have previously reviewed and released a video on the 15-inch version of this, and we have also reviewed the 14-inch version of this back in 2021. So we're not going to bog down on the details of the build quality and the peripherals because honestly, they're pretty unchanged. What we do want to answer today is whether this is a worthy successor to those 2021 editions. And what better place to start this review than the specifications of this version. It features an AMD Ryzen 9 6900HX processor, an RTX 3070 Ti at 100 watts TDP, 16 gigs of DDR5 at 4800 MHz, a 1TB NVMe SSD, and of course the 14-inch QHD 2K 165Hz display that Razer is famous for. As with many of our videos, we do have a giveaway towards the end, so make sure you stick around to check out how to enter. But back to the performance of the Razer. Now, with comparison in mind, let's put the Razer Blade 14 through its paces against the previous versions of the 14-inch and 15-inch. Now, a more direct comparison will be the 14-inch version, which featured an RTX 3080. It also included the 5900HX, which is the direct predecessor of the 6900HX found in the 2022 edition, and also has 16 gigs of DDR4. To avoid confusion, I'm going to call this laptop in front of me the 2022, and I'm going to call the previous version of the 14-inch the 2021. Now, the Razer Blade 15 included a different setup from the Blue Team, including a 10750H and an RTX 3070. All laptops did feature a 2K screen. The first test that we ran was on the CPU with a head-to-head R23 Cinebench test. This one was one of the most interesting tests we could run because it pitted the 6900HX against the 5900HX in the same chassis and cooling setup. In multi-core score, the 6900HX of the 2022 pulled 13,859 in the multi-core performance, while the 5900HX in the 2021 pulled 13,511. This was only a 2.5% difference, and I have to admit I needed to put the 6900HX through its paces multiple times before I could say confidently that it beat the 5900HX. This is reflected on paper, the 6900HX as the same number of cores and only a tiny 0.3 GHz bump in the max boost clock, which is probably throttled by the cooling performance of the Razer Blade 14 anyway. Despite this, both the 2021 and 2022 smashed the Blue Team. The 10750H pulled a 5,711. This kind of vindicates our assessment of the 10th gen CPUs at the time, which were abysmal, but luckily the Blue Team has picked up some slack since then with their 12th gen CPUs. In Firestrike, the 2022 scored 23,589, while the 2021 scored 22,589. There honestly wasn't much difference in it, and I wasn't surprised that the 3080 was beaten out by the 3070 Ti, considering the fact they both run the same TDP of 100 watts. For the larger 15-inch model, the Firestrike hit 18,688, and it was definitely no surprise that the AMD version smashed the Intel and the 3070. Interestingly, when we moved over to the 4K Firestrike Ultra test, it spelled out a different story, with the newer version in front of us today losing out to the 2021 version by a margin of 4%. This is not insanely surprising given the higher GPU memory capacity and performance of the 3080 proving performant in higher resolution gameplay. So that's something to consider if you are buying a higher resolution laptop or screen. Finally, in our DirectX 12 testing, the 2021 again edged out the newer model with a 6% upset, sitting at 10,288 against the newer model's 9,724. Again, the 15-inch got beaten out with a score of 8,298, giving us a 16% difference between the newer model. In Rise of the Tomb Raider, the Razer was able to pull an average of 82.39 FPS in the 1K benchmark and 77.4 FPS in the 2K benchmark. During gameplay, the FPS averaged between 65 and 75 FPS at 2K, but had some noticeable dips. Interestingly, the DLSS that normally is a standout performer in these smaller, low-powered laptops didn't have a noticeable difference to the Razer's performance. The GS77 on the other hand came in at a 1K benchmark of 97.74 FPS. In Forza 5 at Ultra, the Razer benchmarked at 47 FPS, which isn't that great, but in gameplay was managing between 50 and 60 FPS. I would still consider turning down some of the settings as it wasn't great for extended periods of gameplay. The GS77 was able to benchmark in 1K at 59 FPS, which was surprisingly low, and during gameplay it managed to run at a similar FPS in the 2K testing between 50 and 60 FPS. Finally, in Metro Exodus, the Razer actually had a playable 2K experience with DLSS turned to Ultra with an average of between 60 and 70 FPS. This is a solid performance given the fact that the GS77 was basically a slideshow at 45 to 50 FPS. Mind you, that was at its native resolution of 4K. In practice, under these benchmark conditions, the Razer Blade 14 is still one of the toastiest laptops that we have reviewed and comes in at a palm rest temperature of about 30 to 35 degrees. Now this compares to the GS77, which has a palm rest under gameplay conditions of about 20 to 25 degrees. I did notice that they did make some marginal improvements over the previous generation, but I don't know if that was just placebo or they actually improved the cooling performance on this specific laptop. The sound on the 14 is 52 dBA under load and 35 dBA at idle. The GS77 is about 55 dBA under load settings. The screen on the Razer Blade 14 is still absolutely stunning. It comes in at Quad HD or 2K and has a 165Hz refresh rate, which is absolutely great for gameplay and work applications. Now, Razer does say that each of their panels is individually calibrated, and I would normally call this some marketing BS, but honestly, looking at these screens, they're absolutely stunning, and I believe what Razer says. To be honest, I couldn't say that this screen is marketably any better than any previous versions of the Razer screens I've tested before, and given the gameplay performance of this machine, it's not going to get anywhere near pushing that 165Hz refresh rate anyway. The Razer Blade 14 2022 edition is by no means a worthy successor to the 2021 edition. I wouldn't even consider it a successor to this version. I would more consider it a patch. In the same way that Apple incrementally improves their iPhone and iMac design, while maybe increasing or improving the design every couple of years, Razer has taken the same ethos and approach to their laptops by incrementally improving the design without drastically changing anything. The design and build quality of the Razer Blade 14 still remains unbeaten in the market today, and it rivals some of the largest gaming laptop companies in the world, and Razer's been making laptops a lot shorter of a time than they have. That being said, the Razer Blade 14 only makes incremental improvements over the previous generation, and these improvements include minor performance tweaks, some power improvements in terms of reducing the power consumption, and some minor improvements on the cooling performance, although these are important because the Razer Blade series laptops have huge issues with thermal control. That being said, I wouldn't be rushing out to purchase the Razer Blade 2022 edition, especially if I've already picked up a laptop in 2021. Thank you guys so much for checking out the most recent review on the Epic PC channel. To celebrate this, we're going to be giving away a Razer Viper 8K to one lucky viewer. It's completely free to enter, and you can find the information on how to enter in the links in the descriptions below. As always, feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I will catch you in the next video.